It's really pretty.
Thank you. I washed it for you.
Hey, PaleoFX tribe. I am here with Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, Paleo Mom, and I am real excited to, Sarah and I haven't had a chance to sit down in quite a while. And so this is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I'm assuming we're just having a visit and then there's like people who get to watch.
That's right. Yeah. I like people. Yeah. Why would anybody want to do that? But yeah, our last one went really well, I think, and we had a good talk, and there was a lot of people on. So anyway, cool. Thank you so much for coming on, and we're really super excited about having you coming back to Health Entrepreneur FX.
Well, I'm excited to come back. I had so much fun at the last Health Entrepreneurs FX that I spoke at, and I was just really excited that the schedule worked well for me to come back this time, because I think it's just a really amazing event. It is such a like dynamic and enthusiastic group of people and such creative thinkers. Like, it's one of those events that I get to leave completely like recharged and inspired, even though I'm like a speaker and I'm supposed to be helping other people be inspired, but it actually is so recharging for me. It's such a wonderful opportunity to just, be in this amazing creative space. So I'm really excited about it.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm excited to have you come back. What's your favorite part about it?
I think there's when we do the breakaway sessions and we really get into these like smaller groups, and we get to have this much more sort of intimate and dynamic and really, really specific conversations where we're brainstorming together, or we're talking through specific challenges, and you get not just, right, you get everybody's brain in that little group working on one person's particular challenge, and then you get to then translate that to the next person, go on down the line. That to me, there's so much positive energy and creativity and innovation that happens in those little groups. And then we get to go away from that with new ideas, with new direction, with new alliances, right? So a lot of this event is meeting people who might have a complementary product or a skill set that you can use, or have experience doing what you're doing that they can lend to you. So part of the event, of course, is getting to meet and pick the brains of business leaders in this space. But the other part is just the aspect of meeting and connecting with peers in this space, which I think is just as valuable, if not more so.
No, I completely agree with you, because there is something about it that somebody that has, very similar values and what you're doing and what your background is, and when they've been somewhere you haven't been and that you're kind of struggling with or whatever, it is great to be able to network and find those people that are going to kind of have the same passion for what we're all doing as you do, and will want to help in your business. And I think that's one of the great aspects of not just Health Entrepreneur FX, but Paleo FX itself, is the being able to network and really be around like-minded people, and being able to forge those connections, have collaborations, and who knows, new partnerships, new businesses.
Well, so many of us come to this sphere. We come from such a diverse background. So many of us kind of stumble on here, typically inspired by our own health journeys, and then we're like trying to like fill in the blanks in terms of skill set in order to be successful at whatever our chosen goal is. And so being able to network with other people who maybe have some experience, or maybe from their own backgrounds, that they can sort of help guide you, help provide mentorship, like those connections are so valuable in large part because so many of us are making it up as we go. So having someone else who's maybe already walked part of that path, being able to say, hey, here's some great tips, it can make all the difference in terms of not just our ability to be successful in our entrepreneurship, but also like to maintain our own self and our own sanity and our own health. Like that's so important. And that's one of the reasons why I'm talking about sort of maintaining our own health through entrepreneurship this year at the Health Entrepreneurs FX.
Yes, and so actually, the title of your talk is the work-life balance myth, or the myth of the work-life balance. Do you want to explain a little bit about that and what you're planning, what your goals are for that talk?
Yeah. So we have this phrase in society of work-life balance. And this was something that, like, the last couple of years, my New Year's resolution was, I'm going to work harder on work-life balance. And this was my big goal, was this buzzword, work-life balance. And I think for a lot of us, work-life balance means, work is our jobs or our businesses. And then life is being social and playing with our friends and, girls' night out and meeting for drinks after work and spending time with our kids and our spouses. And what ends up happening, especially in the entrepreneurship space, where typically we're working much more than full-time hours, the life part of work-life balance ends up being a draw on our energy and our time in a way that competes with the energy and time that we're trying to dedicate to our business. And what ends up happening is we get like overwhelmed because we're spread so thin. So we go, I'm going to achieve work-life balance. And it ends up completely undermining the goal, right? When we say, I want to achieve work-life balance, it doesn't mean I want to do everything for everybody else, right? The idea behind that is I want to find balance in my life so that I can be happy and maintain my health and look after myself and do self-care. And the way most of us jump into it, it ends up eroding that, because it ends up being a time sink away from practices that are actually really important for maintaining health. It ends up being a time sink sort of away from things like sleep or stress management or activity, things that are actually really, really important for us to be able to maintain our physical health and our mental health, right? So that impacts productivity and innovation and all of these other things. So I kind of want to, with this talk, draw the conversation back to redefining work-life balance, so that it isn't work hard, play hard, which I think is how most of us approach it, but that it really is self-preservation in order to achieve better efficiency with our work so that we can enjoy the life, right? Like, that to me is what work-life balance really is. It is maintaining our physical and mental health so that we can get more done at work in less time, and then have valuable social time as well, but not have that social time be an energy drain, have it be time that is adding to our quality of life. So really finding, it's a different type of balance, and it's a different approach to that equation when you think of it in that more sort of holistic and self-preservation way.
So you were talking about when you submitted for this, you talked about self-care being critical in this, and this is an interesting subject because I've heard these terms, self-care and self-love and all of those things. I've heard those for years, and they were always kind of this, I don't know, for me, this really esoteric kind of thing that I never really understood or grasped. It just seemed kind of hippy dippy and little woo and all of that stuff. And so it's interesting going through my own health issues. And I know you're gonna talk a little bit about your health issues with the book. And writing a health book is not necessarily healthy.
It's really one of the worst things you can do for your health.
Right. So it's interesting because going through some of my own health issues, then I started really understanding what self-care and what self-love is, and having to understand how important that is. So you want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
So, I really, in my initial attempts to find work-life balance, I started this off at a point where, my first couple of books, each single book, my first 3 books, I had a massive health crisis at the end of every single book. Mm-hmm. And there were different health crises, although 2 of them were pneumonia. So, apparently that's the way I roll. But I started this where my health was fairly tenuous, and it was already kind of hanging on by a thread because I'm not very good at stress management. That's my big challenge. I tend to, it's not even that I'm bad at saying no to things. It's that I put my own things on my plate. I have so many ideas of things that I want to do that I create my own ridiculously over ambitious to-do list, right? So I do it to myself. It's, I want to do this and I want to do this. And I'm a little bit of a workaholic, so I can get into that space really, really easily and ignore like everything else. And so when I first said, okay, I'm going to start this work-life balance thing. This is my goal. I need to, refocus my life so I've got more quality time with my kids, more quality time with my husband, and I'm going to make sure that I, get to nurture friendships locally. And right, this is all of these things, all of these goals are wrapped up into this one term of work-life balance. And it ended up driving me nearly to the brink again, because instead of it being helping my stress management, to be devoting all of this quality time to all of these other people, I was spread even thinner. And the things that are easy to give up are things like sleep, are things like meditative practices, or time in nature, right? Like what am I going to do? Am I going to spend 3 hours hiking in the woods, or am I going to spend 3 hours in front of my computer working? Like you start having this give and take for time commitment, and it became easier and easier to give up things that were really, really important for my own sanity, my own physical and mental health. And so I had to really switch gears in terms of what are the things that make it onto my calendar? What are the things that are non-negotiable? And those are what became self-care activities. So they became the things that, and I really had to switch. I had to think of working out as part of my job. It is my job to be healthy. So I have to walk the walk. Like this is my job. And I had to then carve out, my 6 hours at the gym every single week. That was like, now this is part of my job. Like this is my self-care, but I had to think of it differently as something that was now non-negotiable. And then my bedtime had to become something that was non-negotiable. Quality time with my kids still makes it onto my like non-negotiable list, but it stopped being outings, and quality time stopped being, we're going to go to the zoo together, and we're going to go to the science museum together, and we're going to have this great girls afternoon where we go do all these things together. And it had to switch to, no, we're just going to like hang out and laugh. We're just going to have a goofy monkey dance party in the kitchen. And I'm not demonstrating that, by the way, just in case that was your next question. Monkey dance.
Because I actually was going to say, can we see that real quick? But anyway, go ahead.
No, it's a secret. It's a secret Ballantyne tradition that shall never ever be seen by the public. But I had to start thinking in terms of these lifestyle priorities, because my diet's dialed in, right? There's not a thing that I can do with my diet to make it better, but my lifestyle is my big challenge, because I tend to give up sleep when I'm working towards a deadline, because I tend to do too much. My stress level is always really high. And the things that I tend to give up to create more time are the things that help manage my stress level. So I had to look at those as, I call those self-care activities. A lot of people think of self-care activities as going to the spa for half a day, right? Going to get our nails done or our hair done. And for a lot of people that can really recharge them. For me, those were time sinks. I can't spend 4 hours at the spa and then come back to my work and feel recharged. I come back to my work and think about, oh no, now I have less time and the same to-do list. So I have to really go like real basics, what are the things that preserve my actual health, and make sure that those are scheduled. They're in my calendar. They have to get done. They are just as high priority on my to-do list as anything work related, as anything family related. Those are things that are part of my job, because they keep me healthy in order to do everything else. And one of the things that I noticed when I started prioritizing self-care activities, which I maintained throughout the entire writing of Paleo Principles and the creation of my online course, AIP lecture series, which is launching next week. In all of that, I mean, those were two huge projects that I did side by side for most of this year. And I managed to get through all of it. And I mean, knock on wood, my health is fine, and in fact is probably better than it was at the beginning of the year. And it is because of prioritizing these self-care activities and making those things non-negotiable throughout that entire process. So even in the height of the stress of editing and getting that book off to print, I was still going to bed at 10 p.m. every single night. And what I noticed was my productivity improved. And there's actually a lot of science in terms of, cognition research and productivity research, which is science I'm going to draw on a lot for my talk at Health Entrepreneurs FX. But that research really reinforces the value of making sure that we get enough sleep, making sure that we have activity every single day, making sure that we have time for laughter every single day, making sure that we have some empty space in the day. That's a hard one. Some time without the phone. And whether that's a meditation practice or some nature time or just, space in our own head. I found that by putting away all of my devices when I cook in the evening. So instead of throwing on a podcast or the radio to cook, to just cook and just be processing things, be thinking in my own head. When I started really working on those sort of tenets of self-care, I found that my focus was higher when I was working. I was all of a sudden getting way more done per unit time. I wasn't as easily distracted. I had more energy, and I was making faster transitions. So like my transition from getting home from the gym to getting in front of my computer and actually getting things done was much faster compared to what it was before. So it ended up that the time that I was committing to self-care was more than made up for in terms of how much I was actually getting done in my work hours.
That's awesome. So let me ask you a question. So how do you choose the projects that you are going to put on your plate when you have all of this list of non-negotiables as far as your time is concerned? How do you choose your projects?
I guess passion. So passion and reach, I guess, are the two things. So my number one motivating overarching theme behind everything that I do is improving public health through scientific literacy. Mm-hmm. So I think about how many people can I touch with this information? How many new people can I reach with this information? How valuable is this information for the people who are already following me? So it's how, like, for my unit time that I'm going to devote to this project, how many lives are going to be affected, right? That's a pretty basic equation. And then how passionate am I about this topic? How much am I going to enjoy working on it? Because if I can do work that is, like everything that we do, there's a grunt work aspect and there's a,
satisfaction,
right? There's both sides. Yeah. So if the passion part, if the enjoyable part is amazing, then the grunt work doesn't seem so bad. So can I find that balance where I'm going to love writing this article or working on this particular book or whatever, or this video project or whatever it is? Am I going to enjoy that so much that the grunt work aspect is just easy to tolerate? And is this project going to be meaningful? Is it going to change lives? It's going to affect people? Is it going to help reach more people with this really important message? And so sometimes it's hypothetical, right? Like sometimes you don't know until the project's done and it's out there whether or not it achieved the goals that you set out. But then hopefully the other things, right? The passion project part of it has at least made up for some of that. So I tend to think about reach and changing lives first. Somewhere in that formula is monetization. Is this going to be able to bring in money so I can pay for my assistants? Because when you have employees, you have to bring in a certain amount of money to be able to pay them. So part of the equation is that. And then long-term growth, right? So it's not just growth of my audience, but just growth of the message and reaching new lives. That becomes a really important part of the equation.
So I have a quick question. We got a couple of questions, but one of them is from my husband. So here. I think we just have it up here. Does Sarah use a sleep app or HRV monitoring?
Yes, I use an Oura Ring, which actually does both. So it is, I've used this for 14, 15 months, something like that. It was a little over a year. And the sleep data is almost as accurate as a polysomnogram. So it's almost like having a sleep study every single night. And it, at this point, does HRV overnight, which is a really good measure of overall stress level. And the new Oura Rings that are coming out, they're available for pre-order now, and they're coming out in April. We'll do HRV during the day, and I'm really excited about that. Because their whole thing is balancing recovery versus load. So load is physical load and psychological load, and recovery is really sleep quality. You can measure recovery in how well you sleep. And so it gives me a really good sense of, like, really, really quickly, of how well I have everything dialed in. So if sometimes bad habits will creep back without me necessarily realizing it, but I can see it in my sleep. And so as soon as I can see it in my sleep, I go like, well, what did I do? Oh, well, I had a snack after dinner last night. That's not a great thing to eat after dinner. Like, really, it's much better to have a couple hours between a meal and going to bed. Well, why was I having a snack? Oh, because I was eating to keep myself awake because I'm tired and I should have just gone to bed earlier. Okay, well, instead, that's what I'll do tonight. So it gives me that really dynamic feedback really, really quickly in terms of how well I have things dialed in. And it has just really been just like my favorite toy. So yeah, that.
Awesome. Keith and I are super excited. Oura Ring is going to be coming to Paleo FX this year.
Yay!
So we're super happy about that, and we get our rings here soon, so we can't wait. So thanks for that.
I love them. They're wonderful.
Yeah, I'm excited because I've had all different types of wearables and really liked them, but I'm looking forward to this one because of how in depth that I have heard repeatedly it is. So we're super excited, and Keith has can't wait to get our rings. Anyway, okay, and then we have another question real quickly from Tiffany Wozni Cole. I hope I said that right, Tiffany. Can you comment about paleo or keto and the effects on fatty liver?
So there have been some interesting links in the scientific literature on keto and fatty liver. What's interesting is, and this is one of the interesting things about ketogenic diets, is when you start looking at adverse reactions, things like fatty liver, things like cardiovascular disease risk factor, there seems to be these two different sides of the spectrum. So there seems to be some people that will have fatty liver resolve and will have their cardiovascular disease risk factors normalize. And then you'll have these other people who have their cardiovascular disease risk factors go crazy and it will cause fatty liver. And there's certainly been animal studies showing that it causes fatty liver. So it's this very, very strange dichotomy between like responders and non-responders. And I mean, I've been quite vocal about not supporting a ketogenic diet for most people. I think the science is very strong in terms of neurodegenerative disease. And I think it is not a sustainable or healthy approach for other people. And I certainly have, information on my website with plenty of scientific references in terms of the details behind how I came to that conclusion. Paleo, I haven't seen any studies showing that it increases chance of fatty liver. There has been one study showing that it can decrease fatty liver. It actually is probably the most effective long-term sustainable weight loss diet. We have studies now looking at weight loss effects as long as 2 years, right? Clinical trials that last 2 years, which is very, very unusual to have clinical trials last that long. And that's probably because paleo offers more sort of important nutrients that keto doesn't. So it's much higher in fiber, which is really important for a healthy gut microbiome. It does provide some carbohydrates, which is important for hormone regulation. For certain hormones are better regulated when there's some slow burning carbohydrates in our diet. It still focuses on healthy fats, but not in the gut microbial community. So a really high fat diet above 60-ish% calories from fat will skew the gut bacteria towards less desirable strains. So it has that benefit as well. And then it also provides sufficient protein, and it's a micronutrient sufficient diet, which keto just doesn't have enough plant material to provide sufficient nutrients. You have to supplement with keto. And with paleo, you can get nutrient sufficiency with a sort of I suggest kind of a plant-based paleo. So about a quarter of our dinner plates is a high quality protein, seafood or meat. And about 3/4 of our plates is a variety of vegetables, including something starchy or a high antioxidant fruit, which has lots of valuable phytochemicals. So with all of that, you get nutrient sufficiency, which is also really, really important for liver health. And then other things are related, right? So sleep is related, activity is related, stress management's related. And that's one of the things that I think paleo has above other diets that have some science to support them, right? Like there's some good science supporting Mediterranean diet, right? Where paleo beats out Mediterranean diet is not just in its nutrient density, but also in its lifestyle approach wrapped into the whole diet. And that's one of the reasons why there's so many of us who identify as following paleo. It's very effective at mitigating and reversing pretty much all chronic illness, even though it can take a little bit of tweaking, right? Things like the autoimmune protocol, but it's because it's so effective because it's this very comprehensive approach to health. It really looks at everything in the scientific literature that we know is an input to health and picks the best of all of those things. And it's not just about diet, it's also about lifestyle.
Gotcha. Well, I have another quick question here for you. And she has kind of a follow-on question. Here's her first one. I recently was diagnosed with lupus and RA. Will your new book be helpful in directing me? I'm overwhelmed and don't just want doctors to give me drugs. Amen, sister. We don't want that anymore. We want to fix the underlying cause. So what can you say about this to April?
So April, I would say it depends on where your starting point is. So my new book is Paleo Principles, and it's a general health book. It's this giant one behind me. That's wow. Huge. It has, look, it weighs 6 pounds. It's fine. It has a lot of information on modifying paleo for autoimmune disease, but it is a general health book. So it also has information on diabetes and obesity and cardiovascular disease and kidney disease and performance and pregnancy and growth and development. And it generally sort of goes through the entire body of scientific literature and all of the different facets of paleo. Also in terms of separating out ideas that have been very traditionally part of the paleo community that maybe don't have super strong science to support them. So kind of separating out those ideas from the ideas that are really strongly supported by scientific evidence. So we have really strong scientific evidence that grass-fed meat and seafood and eating tons of vegetables and some fruit is really, really healthful for us. We have tons of scientific evidence pointing to what are the best fats for us to eat. We have a lot of scientific evidence showing that balanced macronutrients is the healthiest way to eat for most people. We have lots of evidence that grains are not a health promoting food, that soy and peanuts are not health promoting, that conventional dairy is not a great food. But then there's a lot of like other things that the science is not so cut and dried on. So for example, it's hard to come up with an argument against a traditionally prepared legume that's not soy or peanuts. So a properly prepared lentil, it's really hard to come up with a scientific argument against that. That's where bioindividuality becomes a much bigger factor. And so it becomes more important to be able to experiment on yourself and see what your tolerance is to a traditionally prepared lentil than to say dogmatically this is paleo or this isn't paleo. But then like tomatoes, which are traditionally considered paleo, are actually kind of an inflammatory food. So there's some things that are traditionally considered paleo that might not work for everybody, and some things that are traditionally not considered paleo that might work for a lot of people. So I've separated those foods out and explained the pros and cons and who these might work for and who they might not work for. So I've tried to get away from paleo dogma and stay very, very rooted in the scientific evidence. So in terms of the autoimmune protocol, this would give you all of the information you need to get started. But if you want to dig much deeper into the autoimmune protocol, because you've got this diagnosis of 2 different autoimmune diseases, my first book, which is this one, The Paleo Approach, is the science behind the autoimmune protocol. And then both of my cookbooks are autoimmune protocol cookbooks. So it depends on where you want to go. These are certainly complementary. There's information in the Paleo Approach that's not in Paleo Principles, and information relevant to people with autoimmune disease and Paleo Principles that's not in the Paleo Approach. So if you were going to get one or the other, I'd say it depends on your starting place. If you are just new to making dietary changes, go with Paleo Principles. If you're ready to dive into the autoimmune protocol, you've been paleo for a while and you need to get into this like super specific, dig deeper, go with the paleo approach.
I like it. And she says, awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyway, cool. Well, now, oh, wait, we got another question here. Hang on. One more here. Not sure. It looks like it got cut off. Hang on, let me put it up here and then maybe we can get it. Oh, there it is. Need to take antibiotics for
confirmed UTI.
Love that.
Yeah. Okay. Worried about antibiotics after 60 days of paleo with the first 30. I assume that's AIP protocol. Which probiotic should I be on? I have been free of medication for 60 days. Yes. Yeah, so I think to back up a little bit, I think it's really important to emphasize that as much as our goal is to get to the root cause of disease and to make diet and lifestyle choices that support overall lifelong health, that doesn't mean that all conventional medicine is bad, or there's never a time and place for antibiotics, or that we have to get rid of every prescription medication that we're on. That's not the goal. The goal is not to never see your doctor again. The goal is to see them a lot less and have informed, educated, like detailed conversations with them about the pros and cons of whatever we're considering doing. But the idea is to use conventional medicine in an informed way and judiciously. So we use it when it's necessary, and when it's not necessary, we've got this super healthy diet and lifestyle to support our health. So taking probiotics for an infection, when that infection is potentially life-threatening, that is exactly when we take antibiotics. Doing a surgical procedure, taking pharmaceutical medications. There's even taking some botanical supplements. Like there's a time and a place for all of these. And I just generally recommend being your own health advocate. So learning about it, researching it, and if you can find a functional or integrative medicine specialist to work with, so you can have that more dynamic conversation off the bat in terms of, is this really necessary? What are my other options? How can I support my body through this? Which is, the heart of Tony's question is, how do I support my body through antibiotics and recovering from antibiotics? Having that conversation with a functional or integrative medicine specialist is really, really important. So in terms of supporting our bodies during and after a course of antibiotics, diet accounts for about 60% of the diversity in our gut microbiome. So the other 40% is exposure to probiotics. So that means that when we're recovering from antibiotics, we really want to do both. So in terms of diet, the best thing we can do is eat a lot of vegetables and some fruit. So fiber, especially it's the type of fiber in vegetables and fruit is so important compared to the vegetable and grains, because the structure has antioxidants built right into the structure. And just like antioxidants are anti-aging for us, they're anti-aging for our gut bacteria. So a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit. If you're having a hard time digesting them, go with purees, whether that's smoothies or pureed soups. Go with cooked vegetables, start there. See if you can work up more and more raw, because the fiber is more intact raw. It's sort of partially broken apart once it's cooked, which is why it's easier on our digestive tracts, but it's also, not as readily available as a food source for gut bacteria when it's cooked that way. So high vegetable consumption, and the types of fats we're eating is really important. So I already alluded to high fat intake was a problem from a gut microbiome perspective. It's especially saturated fat. So keeping saturated fat to 10 to 15% of total calories becomes really important, and high omega-3s becomes really important. So there's studies that show that just adding fish oil to our diet can be a tremendously important corrective influence on our gut microbiome, and can actually completely change the composition of the microbiome in about 2 weeks. Eating more vegetables can do the same thing in about 3 days. So vegetables is clearly a stronger stimulus. So high vegetable consumption and high omega-3 fats, but moderate overall fat intake. So under about 50% of total calories, which is completely consistent with hunter-gatherer intakes. It's not, that's right? Anywhere between 20 and 50% is you're getting enough fat to support health, and you're sticking below that level that can cause problems in terms of the gut microbiome and the vascular effects of really, really high fat intake. And then in terms of probiotics, diversity is the best. So the more different kinds of strains you can get exposed to, the better. And we get the most exposure from strains actually from probiotic foods, fermented foods, rather than anything we can get in a pill bottle. So a raw, unpasteurized sauerkraut, especially a wild ferment, is the most amazing thing in the world. It can have up to 680 different strains of probiotic bacteria. So if you think of any pill bottle, like there's some amazing ones out there now with 20 or 30 strains, which is still, right, 5% of what's in sauerkraut. So any kind of wild fermented vegetables, amazing. And then kombucha or like a water kefir, those will have about 40 different strains, very complementary strains because they'll have more beneficial yeast compared to what's in something like sauerkraut. So that's another amazing option. And then don't underestimate the value of eating dirt. So dirt has a different types of probiotic bacteria in it. They're called soil-based organisms. They are natural residents of a healthy gut microbiome. And even though there's not really great supplement options for this anymore, we can get a long ways by sourcing organic produce and not washing it very well. So you can like brush off the big clumps of dirt and then eat the small bits of grit. It's good for you.
That's awesome. Okay, so you are planning to, anyone that purchases a ticket to Health Entrepreneur FX currently gets receives Sarah's Go to Bed program for free.
Yeah.
So do you want to explain a little bit about your program, Go to Bed?
Yeah, so it is an online program. It comes with a huge 360 some odd page ebook that is all of the science behind sleep, and not just like why we need sleep and how much sleep we should get and what normal sleep looks like, but also how we get that sleep. So it's not just a tongue-in-cheek go to bed. I mean, it is a little bit, because most of us, that's our biggest challenge to getting enough sleep, is just going to bed. But it also goes through all of the different things in terms of diet and lifestyle that impact sleep quality, and how we can sort of dial that in really, really easily. And then it has a 14-day challenge where you make one iterative step a day that is completely designed to improve sleep quality. And we've actually done some sleep scoring data on people who've gone through the challenge, and they have on average quite substantial improvements in sleep quality in that short period of time. So just 2 weeks of doing these incremental changes. So that program is valued at $40. And because sleep is so phenomenally important for our overall health, because it is such an important self-care activity for us entrepreneurs, and it can increase productivity and cognition and memory and all of these really important things, not to mention reduce inflammation and improve performance, like all of these things that we all want so importantly. And it's going to be a pretty important feature of my talk. I thought that giving this huge resource to everybody so that they can all get better sleep and hopefully reap the benefits, not just in terms of their health, but also in terms of their business enterprises. That was the gift that I wanted to give everybody who comes to Health Entrepreneurs FX this February.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. We so appreciate it. So you guys, if you want to get your ticket for Health Entrepreneur FX, you can do it now at the still discounted rate at $9.97. And that is a great value because we have amazing speakers like Dr. Sarah Ballantyne that will be at the event. And to be able to, we spoke a little bit earlier about being able to network and to also just be in these small groups with these amazing speakers who have built incredible businesses out of their passion for helping people and empowering people to be their own health advocates, which, that's probably one of the best businesses to be in, I gotta say. I'm happy to and honored to be part of this group that's in this, because once it doesn't matter how much money we have and all of that, if we don't have health, we just don't have quality of life. And I think it's probably one of the greatest gifts ever. So when you decide you're going to go into this business, we want to make sure that your business is going to thrive and do well and provide you an opportunity to continue to help more and more people. So that's why Help Entrepreneur FX exists. And so get your ticket, get it now, and then you're going to get a great free copy of Go to Bed program from Sarah Ballantyne. And thank you so much, Sarah, for being here and for coming to Help Entrepreneur FX in the past and coming to this one coming up. We're so excited to have you come back. And I think everyone knows how to get in touch with or follow Sarah, but you want to just tell us that real quickly? How can they follow?
So I'm at thepaleomom.com, and from there you can link to all of my social media sites. You can link to my podcast. You can link to my books. You can find information about my new 6-week online course that's launching January 1st. And you can just stay up to date with everything that I'm doing. So thepaleomom.com is home central.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being with us. And thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us and for being part of the Paleo FX family.
Well, thanks again.
Y'all have a great evening, and we will see you guys soon. Okay.